Hey everyone, Rheyo here, and welcome back to my channel. This is just going to be a quick little video because I've had a couple requests on it regarding what are my thoughts on Necromancy and how is it going to affect my Legacy Locked Iron Man series and just what am I going to do with Necromancy. So just going to cut right into it. From first, I'll say this. I'm just like I've done Maxing Melee, I've done Reckless Ranger, and I've done Maniacal Magician. I'm also going to do a Necromancer related series or Necromancy related series because, consistency's sake, and it's going to be a new combat skill and it looks very exciting. So, of course, I'm going to do a progression series with Necromancy. What that's going to look like, I don't really know because, it's a new combat skill, which is something that RuneScape has literally never experienced before. I don't know how it's going to pan out. Like, whereas before it was essentially just, make upgrades and try out new bosses and learn how to do new bosses. This is going to be like entirely from the ground up, like training it all the way from 1 to 120, going through the whole entire process and almost just like a playthrough of the skill itself. So with that, what is the name going to be? I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into this. I've had some ideas kind of, but there was one suggestion on stream earlier this week to go with the name Nefarious Necromancer. And I really like the sound of that. So chances are that is what the series title is going to be. So Nefarious Necromancer is coming 2023. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. But when it comes to probably the burning question here, for me at least, and maybe a few other people who enjoy playing Legacy, is will it actually work in Legacy? So from what I've been told and what I understand, it will. Like the baseline of it will work in Legacy. And when I say the baseline, I literally just mean auto attacking. Like from what I understand, like everything's going to be tied to abilities, like summoning different undead and all these other things are just going to be abilities, which is completely what I expected from the skill itself. Legacy was released as kind of like a makeup from what I remember. It wasn't released as an intended way for the game to play. It was pretty much just like EOC had a very shaky release and Legacy was a way of being like, okay, let's bring back some of the old aspects so we can kind of, appease that aspect of the community, which I thought it was awesome at the time. But to be honest, even though I'm doing this series, I do think that the game shouldn't really cater around Legacy. But since it is an official way to play, I do think it should be considered. I think that's very fair to expect because if you're not going to consider like, we have Revolution, we have Full Manual, we have Legacy. If you're not going to consider one of those things, then why are you just going to have it in the game? You might as well just get rid of it, So Legacy, from what I've been told, in short, auto attacks at least will work. And the reason why I was concerned about that is because all the footage I saw is the auto attack ability was an ability, melee, ranged, magic. We have a series of basic abilities which kind of make up for the lack of auto attacks. And then you have just like baseline auto attacks incorporated into that. So it's a little bit confusing compared to other games where you just have like your number one skill is just an auto attack loop of abilities. So it's never really been that way in RuneScape, but they're kind of changing the way that works in RuneScape with Necromancy, whereas your auto attack ability is just an ability, and it just, I can't remember exactly. It's just kind of like on a global cooldown or whatever, but it just uses the same ability over and over and over. And so the way that it's going to work, if you haven't, learned already, it's going to have quite a bit, like it's going to be doing more damage than a standard auto attack would. So this is all to kind of make it so the combat system is a little bit easier to get into for those that are not too keen on the current combat system, which I think is awesome for the future of the game. I think that is a direction that they should 100% go in because, it, in my experience of learning combat, there's a lot of jankiness with the system that like a lot of there's been plenty of times where I've like failed an encounter and it hasn't been to what I feel is my own like ability. It could just be like I queued something on the wrong tick or whatever, but which would be my fault. But you know what I mean? Like if anyone's struggled with RuneScape combat and they've pushed themselves, you can definitely understand that some failures are not a result of your own ability. Sometimes it just feels like it's the game kind of got in the way. So Necromancy seems like it's going to be like not directly alleviating that, but it's going to make all these like switchscape and all these like confusing abilities and all the clutteredness, it's really going to like die down on that. It's really going to reduce that a lot. So I think that is a very solid direction for honestly RuneScape to move in, and I'm glad that they're addressing the combat side of things with this new skill. So I'm very excited for Necromancy. I'm very excited to try it out, and I am very excited to see how it impacts this Legacy Lock series. Now, when I started the series, I didn't like incorporate Necromancy into the goals of the series at all. So even if it has zero impact on the series, I'm still going to do it because I still have a way of completing everything. To my knowledge, I have a way of completing everything to some extent, or at least a majority of my goals. I still have to work out a few things. So Necromancy was just never considered. But one thing that could be a benefit, and I'll have to kind of see how this goes on release, is the fact that Necromancy does have increased auto attack damage. I don't know how much that's going to translate into Legacy, because Legacy by default, your auto attacks do more damage to make up for the lack of ability usage. And so from what I'm understanding, that's considered in Necromancy, but the auto attacks have that extra factor of increased damage. I could be misunderstanding that. So if that's the case, Necromancy could be the way to go for all my combat encounters going forward. So I don't know what kind of rune cost that's going to be. Like if it's going to take a ton of the new rune costs. I don't know what it's going to take. Like Magic will always use runes when I'm using auto attacks in Legacy. Is that going to be the same for Necromancy? I would assume so, but I'm not too sure because I never play tested it and the skill's not out yet. And there's still just things that like I'm reading, but I don't fully comprehend. And I'll be honest, I haven't invested a ton of my time into learning it because there's a lot to digest and I just really haven't had that time yet. All in all, I am excited for it. And I'm not too sure what the incantation side of Necromancy is going to bring. From the screenshots that I've seen, I don't know if the incantations are going to just unlock abilities to use in combat, or if it's going to provide some form of benefit to combat outside of using the incantations as abilities. Similar to things like, I'm thinking with Magic, you have Crystal Mask. You don't need, like that's something in the Magic spellbook, the Lunar spell, or the Ancient spellbook. And you can use that at Crosis without having abilities on your, with being in Legacy, you can still use that from the spellbook. Are the incantations going to be something that is in like a Necromancy spellbook, or are the incantations only going to provide access to certain Necromancer abilities that you can use in combat on your ability bar? I'm not too sure. So that is something that I need to look into more, or if you know that, off the top of your head, feel free to comment that down below, because I would like to start figuring out ways to incorporate Necromancy into the series, because I have a pretty good feeling that it's going to work to some extent and it's going to influence the series in a way. Even if it's only like a small percentage, I feel like it will influence the series in some way. That's honestly all I really have to say about it all. I don't really have a whole lot because I don't have a whole lot of information. There's still a lot of stuff, there's a lot to digest right now, but I feel like I have a decent grasp, but I'm still missing like the finer details. So if you made it all the way to the end, I appreciate you listening and hearing it out. And for those of you that are waiting for episode 8 of Legalocked, we are well underway. I am just doing some invention things. I am just trying to gather components, and I have a pretty big goal coming up for episode 8 that I don't know if you guys are expecting it or not. So definitely stay tuned for episode 8 coming out in the next couple weeks. So anyways, guys, I'm Rheyo. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Take care.